Okay. Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing? I hope you are doing well. I have my little screen here on my cell phone. I'm just trying to load up really quickly the chat so that way I can talk to you guys. I was just live a moment ago and I was live without audio, so I am double checking OBS and it looks like I am recording audio this time. Today we're going to be talking about classes and building classes inside of Maya. The classes inside of Maya, basically what they do is be able to hold in variables and functions that are all part of the same type of object. It's an easy way or a nice way to be able to organize content inside of the code that you're working with. Excuse me. So the way that you define a class is first that we call the class command, and then we have to tell it what the name of the class is. So we are going to say this one is spam. Then we put a colon at the end. Going down to the next line, we have, excuse me, still recovering a little bit. I had a flu shot a few days ago, and it hit me hard afterwards. Okay, so what we can do, just so that we can get the basic structure down and talk a little bit about the classes, is use the pass command here. And when we use pass, what that does, it lets us not have any other code inside of the function, and it will still work, but it doesn't really do anything. It just passes on to the next item inside of the code. So now that we have that, we can, this is basically a blueprint for our class. Now we have to assign it an instance of this class to create an instance of this object so that we can do something with it, because with the class it's similar to a function where we create the function and then we have to use it some way. In this case is the same way with a class. We actually have to assign it. So let's say we call a variable my class. And actually another thing to note about classes, the typical convention is to start with a capital letter for the class. So I'm going to say my class equals spam. And we can run this now. And we can see that we don't get any errors. So we've created a class and we've assigned it to a variable here. Excuse me. So let's try to do something with this just so that I can show you guys what is happening here. So let's do print my class. And when we run that here, we have, it's a main.spam. So it is telling us that it is the main function of the spam class. That is what it is being ran as. So it's really not doing anything other than saying that, hey, we have this class named spam that is being assigned to this variable. But it's not doing anything, so let's start making it a little bit more functional. So with classes, you have attributes and methods, and they're basically variables and functions that are created outside of a class. But when they are inside of a class, a variable is called an attribute, and then a function is called a method. So if we wanted to create an attribute inside of this class, we can do something like eggs equals 2. So Now, instead of printing my class, which is the variable here, let's add .spam, or sorry, .eggs, which is the variable that we assigned inside of this class. So we're doing my class.eggs. So we have it here, and we can see that it's printing eggs, which is giving us a value of 2. Now we can go in and create another instance of this class. We can do something like my class 2 is equal to spam. And then let's copy this line, set up another print statement, and we'll say 2 here. So here we can see that we've changed, or we haven't changed anything. When we print, the eggs are the same on each. Something that we can actually see that when we do, we can actually, with this variable, we can call it through spam, or we can call it through the instance of that class name itself. So first let's try calling it from the class, and actually we'll print that as well so that we can see what that is. So we can say spam.eggs, and that should still print. So we have the 3 different ways to access that variable, and right now they're all 3 the same. So let's try to say spam.eggs is equal to 5. So here we can see when we change spam.eggs, it changed that value for both the instance of my class eggs and my class 2 eggs. So let's say instead of spam, we change my class. So we're going to say my class.eggs is equal to 5. Let's see what happens when we run it now. So when we run it now, we'll see that even though we're calling my class.eggs, it is assigning it to all of the other variables. So no matter which instance of this class we are calling, eggs is kind of like a global variable within the class. So it is changing each one of the instances of that value. So that makes it pretty powerful. If we want multiple instances of a class, we can actually get the variable to change throughout all the different instances if we use it at that global level. Now let's try creating a method. There is a special method that is used inside of classes that lets you initialize the class. So let's try that really quick. So we're going to say define, and then we're going to say 2 underscores init, and then another 2 underscores. We have to give arguments, and the first argument is going to be self. And then let's make it ham, or we'll do var here. Okay, so self is just saying that we're going to access the class itself. And then we need a colon at the end, just like a normal function. And then we're going to say ham, or sorry, not ham by itself, but self.ham is going to be equal to var. So this is going to be a variable that is held inside of the class itself, and it's going to be called ham. So now what that allows us to do here, let me get rid of this line really quick. When we create spam now, we can assign ham at the same time. So if we put arguments here, we can say, let's say 5. And in class 2, it's going to be 10. And now I'm going to print the variable ham for each one of these classes. And see what happens right now. Line 9 is giving us an error because spam itself does not have a variable and it's not initialized. It's only within the classes that happens. So keep aware of that. So even though we've assigned a value here, it's going to not let us print spam.ham because it is not assigned globally. So let's comment that out. And we'll run this here. So we have the ham being printed, and when we created each one, we assigned a value to it. And when we did that, when we go in to print it, we have the values of 5 and 10 that correspond with what we created in the initialization function here. And just like before, we can actually change it. So we can say something like my class.ham is going to equal, and this time let's make it 20. So now when we run this, we can see only that instance of spam is changed. So that makes it pretty useful. We can also go in and say in eggs, let's make this 0 really quick. And then every time we initialize this, we can say eggs equal eggs plus 1. And right now it doesn't know what eggs is, so what we need to do is tell it where eggs are. So we can change that value by telling it to look in the self, and if we do it in self, it will give us one result versus doing it in spam. The way that I actually want to run this is in spam. So I'm going to say spam.eggs equals spam.eggs plus 1. And let's expand this a little bit. Zoom this out. So that shouldn't give us any errors here. Let's print eggs now directly from spam. So now we can see that we assigned 0 to eggs here, but because we created 2 instances of the class, it's actually ends up giving us a 2 when we print the statement here, because each time we initialize this class, we are running this command. Just so that we can see how this is running, let's create the print before we create any classes. And we don't need this line anymore because we're not doing anything with it right now. But we'll go into the next line. So when we see this, we should see it be equal to 0 when it starts off when we print eggs because we initialized it at 0. Then we go in next and we print eggs, and it's initialized it once, so we should have a 1, and then we should have a 2 because we've initialized it a second time. So we should see 0, 1, 2. And that is exactly what happens. So eggs, by default, it starts off at 0, but each time we run this class and we initialize it, it is going to run this line here, which increments the eggs by 1. We can also do self.eggs instead of spam.eggs. And let's see what happens here. So instead of changing the class instance of eggs, you can see that we are changing the instance of this particular class. So eggs never gets changed when we change this to self instead of spam. But if we look at, for example, my class, it doesn't exist at that point, so let's get rid of this one because that will cause an error. But we can assign it here, and we can assign it here, and let's run this. You can see that it is 1 here. So even though it's initialized the second time and it's still using self.egg, it's only affected by spam. So we can do my class 2, and it should still give us the same result because they're both ran once. We can also try to print spam.eggs. And when we look at that, we'll see that it's 0. So the class version of this was never changed. And again, if we change this to spam for the instance that we're looking at, so we're affecting the class, now it should be at 2. It increments here because we've only created one class, but if we put them all at the end, it should all be 2s. And it just depends on where we're placing everything. So we can put this at the beginning if we wanted to and kind of get a similar result to what we had before where it'll print 0, 1, 2. But we're actually looking at different instances each time. And this is just to initialize the function itself, but you can create any functions that you want here that will work with this function. So we can do something like we can call this create sphere, and we'll only access self. Oops. Let me put a colon there. And now we can do, if we go to the top and import the Maya commands. So let's try that really quick. Import maya.cmds as MC. We can do mc.polysphere. So when we run all of this, it's not running this command, it just exists so that we can use it. We can run my class.poly, or what did I call this? C sphere. There we go. So when we run that, if we look at our Maya scene, we should have a sphere in our scene because our command told it to create a sphere. If we wanted to, we can put this into a loop so that way we can see. Let's go to the show the outliner. There we go. So that we can see everything that it creates. But let's do a loop while x is less than 5. We'll create that, and then we'll say x equals x plus 1. I'll create a variable of x here, x equals 0, and we will make this we will make this self.x and self.x. So we're taking this x value and making it 0, and then after we've done this, after the while loop, I'm just going to reset x to equal 0 again. And hopefully I did not get this stuck into an infinite loop. I'm going to copy this just in case. Line 9 says x. Okay, we need to do self.x. There we go. So that way it knows to look inside of the function itself to be able to find out what x is. And then this should be self.x equals 0. Okay, let's try this now. Didn't like self, so let's do spam. There we go. I am running this and we're not getting. Oh, sorry, I didn't change one more line. Self. Or, sorry, not self, but spam. There we go. So we can see that it incremented that spam variable by 1, and it ended up creating 5 spheres. So we can see, we select the sphere, we should have 5 of them in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is what we were expecting. We can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's created that using this function. Because this is a global variable here, it is assigning it there. If we wanted to actually simplify this so that we don't have to use spam, let's actually reset this here. A probably better way to do this, because it's its own function, we can actually define x inside of the function, because we don't need it anywhere else. And then just simplify all this by doing it as an x. Let's delete all of these spheres and try this again. Yep, it works that way as well. This is probably the cleaner way to do this, so I would recommend that you do it this way rather than the craziness that I just did, calling a global level variable of the class. It's not technically a global variable, but it's a class attribute, rather than having it local to the function that we are doing right here. Oops. There we go. But that's kind of a basic introduction to creating variables, or not variables, sorry, classes. So I hope you guys found this useful. We'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.